Well, hello again. This is Pastor Dan Smith from the Flame of Truth. And I'm glad you're beginning to find our program. I bump into people everywhere where they're saying, we've seen you on Flame of Truth on LLBN. So thank you for finding us today. The people in churches where I've pastored and all my friends know that I hate snakes. I grew up over in Thailand and there were snakes all the time. This summer we had a cobra where we were building this school building. So I've collected some awful snake stories. I think the one that I have hated the most was one I read, years and years and years ago. I think it was in Reader's Digest or something. A group of people were on an expedition, I think somewhere, maybe South America. When into the day, several hours into the day, one particular person hadn't showed up at work yet. And finally they went to see, and here he was still sleeping in his sleeping bag, but he wasn't asleep. And they could see this bulge on the under the sleeping bag. And by eye signals and whatever, they finally figured out that during the night a snake had crawled in and nestled on his stomach. And he hadn't moved, he hadn't slept, he hadn't moved all night, scared to death that that snake would somehow do something. Well, they didn't know what to do. He certainly didn't want them to do some quick reaction where that snake would react and bite him. So finally they got the idea of taking the little tarp he had over his sleeping bag and removed it, and the sun beat down, and gradually that snake, as a reptile, got so hot the snake slithered out past his shoulder, and they shot it and they killed it. Can you imagine a snake crawling into your sleeping bag? Well, we've had many snakes in our house, around our house, on our property. Just, I hate the look of them. I hate dealing with them. I hate being the one to have to go out and kill them. I hate snakes. I read one time about a group of people who were on a boat going down the Amazon. And the cook, his custom was to take a match and light, and he would turn on the post of the boat and just strike the match and start his stove. But one time he struck and it wouldn't go, it wouldn't go. Finally figured out a huge anaconda snake had rolled itself around that post, and that's why he couldn't strike the match. Or the Indiana Jones, I forget which movie, I saw a part of it one time when he's running through the jungle and there's a boat out there on the water, a plane, and he jumps onto that boat and he gets in and says, go, 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 and they fly off while the arrows are shooting at him. And finally he feels, okay, I'm safe. And a huge boa constrictor is in the plane with him. And he goes, great, there's a snake in here. We taught our boys for years, keep the door closed. We don't want a snake in here. Nobody wants a snake in their house, in their life with them anywhere. The other one I heard one time about a guy who, he bought a house and evidently the basement was filled with snakes. And one by one they killed the snakes. But they couldn't find one, but they could hear it. They could hear it rattling away behind the wall. One time he got a friend of his, and they got one of those industrial lights, and he got up in front. Another friend went in behind him holding the light. And so he was going in there to have something to kill that snake. The guy behind had the light when the light got too far and pulled out of the extension cord, out of the socket. And here they are, a snake is rattling in front of him, can't go out, his friend's behind him, he can't move, and the snake is there, and it's dark. Snakes. People don't like the beasts in the Bible. And no one likes when the evangelist uses all the beasts with the advertising and tries to scare people to come to God. But they're in the Bible. Why does God use beasts and dragons and snakes? Because he wants people to understand. We're in a war. We're in a great controversy, and he says Satan is like a snake, it is a dragon. And he uses beasts to understand the evil that is all around us. Nobody lets a snake into their life, but you have a snake in your life. It's around you right now. It's under your feet right now. It's in your car, it's in your bedroom, it's in your school, your work. The snake is everywhere. The Bible says we have this enemy that is all around us. We would never think of allowing a snake into our house. We've had 2 get into our house now. We tell the boys, close the door. We don't want a snake in the house. But we let this snake into the house. John Eldridge talks about, he says, we're in a war. We're in a war everywhere. All these movies that they make, these great mythic, epic war scenes. My family was all together. My wife's family were all with us this weekend, and late at night they wanted to watch The Lord of the Rings. So I put up a big sheet and we watched it on a big screen. And here are all these wars between the band, the Fellowship of the Ring, and the Orcs or the Uruk-hai or these other terrible, massive armies. And it's good against evil all the time. We don't always realize it. It's around all the time. The Matrix, all these other movies that have this good and evil. How do you feel when you're attacked? There's an enemy that's after you, after your family, after your relationships, doing whatever it can to somehow pull you away from God and to pull you over to His side. How do you handle it when the war is on? We're going to look at two battles in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah. We're going through Isaiah right now. The war is often about your family. Where is Satan going to get you the most? I think about my family. I come from a minister's family, several generations. My parents are wonderful. My father is gone now as a pastor. One time, 1985, we were going to drive to our church general conference session in New Orleans, a big Superdome. We got the idea. We were in Los Angeles. We'll drive together, save some money. We'll have fun together. We'll talk. We'll solve all the problems of the world and be family. So my brother and I, we're both pastors, young pastors. My parents in the front of a car pulling a little pop-up trailer. By the time we got to Palm Springs, I'd already realized this was a bad idea. My father was sitting in the front seat with just shorts on, and so the air conditioning, he would get cold and he would turn the air conditioning off. We'd be in the back not getting any air. Who turned the air off? We're sweltering. Well, I was cold. It was a constant bickering over the temperature, or where to stop, or where to eat, or what to do, or what route we should take. Constant difficulty. And we're pastors, Christians, godly. I have wonderful parents. But we're under attack. There's an enemy. There's a snake after us. We finally got down, I think, to Galveston, Texas one Saturday, Sabbath afternoon. And one of my parents used a word about a particular group of people that maybe in their generation it was a part of the colloquial terminology. But in my brothers and my generation, you don't use that word. And when one of them used it, my brother and I just came unglued. Said, you cannot use that word. Never use that word again. Well, they were hurt, and they said, you can't talk to us like that. We're your parents. You're supposed to respect us. Yes, but... And we had 2 hours trying to hammer out what it was like to be two adults in our 30s, but still respect our parents if we disagreed with them. Family. My wife and I, we had 2 little boys who are now, 17 and 16. When they were little, one was a new baby, a few months old. We were in Toronto. I had to go to some church headquarters meetings. We're staying in a big high-rise hotel, just having a tough time. Little boy crying, my wife struggling to take care of the boys while I was in meetings. One night, I'm trying to watch over the boys so she could get some sleep. All of a sudden, the fire alarm goes off. We're on the 10th floor. And we go down the stairs. I grabbed one boy, she grabbed the other, grabbed my wallet and car keys, headed down the fire escape with all the others. No sleep. Day after day, my wife wasn't sleeping. She was struggling just to hold on to sanity and to keep taking care of these boys. Finally, it was so difficult and so much tension. I finally said to her, honey, if we don't do something different, we're not going to make it. Our family is not going to make it. And she finally had to just sleep through one of the boys crying and not pick them up every time. And they quickly soon learned that we weren't going to pick them up every time, and we finally got her some sleep. There's an enemy out there after us. It's after you. It's after your family. It's after your relationship with God. Anyway, let's look at these 2 wars. The first one is Isaiah chapter 7. I don't have a map I can show you right now. You have to just sort of visualize the Mediterranean. And there's Israel. Israel came up from Egypt, from the promised land. We have the Philistines between them and the ocean in the south. And then we have, Syria and Ammon and the various countries, Edom and Moab down at the south. And Assyria. We had the United Kingdom, and then we had the divided kingdom. And Israel, the 10 tribes, and Judah. And Assyria is coming after the 10 tribes and eventually destroyed them, and we have the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Well, Israel didn't know what to do. Israel and Assyria went together against Assyria. But they didn't think it was enough, and so they wrote a letter to Judah and said, come up and fight with us against Assyria. Well, they had their own battles, and Judah said, I'm not going to come. So Israel decided, the 10 tribes decided, they were going to come after Judah, and they were going to win a victory and force Judah to come fight with them against Assyria. And so they come. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 1. And it says, when Ahaz, son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem. These are brothers against brothers. These are God's chosen people, Israel, fighting against each other. But they cannot overpower it. Now the house of David was told, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken, as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Judah's scared to death. Doesn't know what to do. They're small. 2 countries coming against them. And so he decides, says he's shaken by the wind, he decides to make an alliance with Assyria, the ones coming after Israel. And so he writes a letter. We have to turn now to 2 Kings, so I'm just going to read it here. 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 7. Ahaz sent messengers to say to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, I am your servant. Come up and save me. And he took the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. Can you imagine? Not going to trust in God anymore. Not sure God is going to take care of him and deliver him from Israel and Syria. So he writes a letter to Assyria, and he takes the treasures that people sacrificed as worship to God to go into the temple. And he takes the silver and gold and he sends it to Assyria, hoping that now a human power will help protect him from Israel. Terrible. And it works. And for a while, Assyria helps him. You can read about it in 2 Kings 16 and 2 Chronicles chapter 28. And so he figures, the other God wasn't helping me much, but Assyria seems to be helping me. I'm going to worship their gods. Evidently, their gods are helping them. I'm going to worship their gods. And so he begins to set up temples to Assyria's gods. He puts statues and idols and altars on all the street corners. He offers his own sacrifices as sons to those gods. And it says in 2 Chronicles 28:23, since the gods of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice to them, so they will help me. You will worship whoever you think will help you the most. And he wasn't sure God was going to help him, and so he gives sacrifices to these other gods. Why did he do it? Not sure God was going to come through. And so he makes an alliance with someone else just in case. Isaiah is the prophet. He comes and he says in chapter 7, verse 4, be careful. Be careful. Keep calm and don't be afraid. Do not lose heart because of these 2 smoldering stubs of firewood. Aram, Ephraim, and Remaliah's sons have plotted your ruin, saying, let us invade Judah, let us tear it apart, and divide it among ourselves, and make the son of Tabeel king over it. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says, it will not take place, it will not happen, and so on and so on and so on. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. Isaiah says, don't give in to them. Don't make alliances with other powers. God will come through for you. What alliance are you making today? Who are you creating altars to? Who do you rely on when things are tough, when you feel attacked, when things aren't working out well? What alliances are you making in your life? Might be, what books are you reading? Who are you trusting? You read that book, not just God books and divine books with wisdom. So, I'm not sure that will fully help me. Let me go read some of the others. Not all wrong. Alliance. Who do you listen to? Who are you watching? Who do you take seriously? Who do you give your time over to? Who are you investing your money with? What alliances? Who are your friends? Who do you start businesses with? What alliances are you making? If you're not sure God will come through, what other alliances are you making? We do them because we're afraid. I had a young man for a while in my last church. Can't tell you many details, but just to say, he came to the decision that he didn't think God was going to help him. He had a couple things that he was just begging God to relieve him and to give him some relief from this problem. And it didn't seem to be happening. So he finally says he went to the other side. And he got a little petrogram, laid it down on the floor, and he prayed to Satan. And he said, if you will help me and give me the power that I want, I will give you a quarter of my life, is what he told me. I didn't give it all. He said, Pastor, I gave a quarter only. Pretty soon, he was under the control, wearing black all the time, petrograms all over his arms, and living a life that was very, very negative consequences in his life and to his family. But he didn't think God was going to help, so he made an alliance with the other side. You and I would never think of sitting down and praying to Satan, but in all kinds of subtle ways, we are making alliances with other powers, but not with God himself. What alliances are you making today? What alliances? Where else have you gone in order to get power and support? Be careful. Be careful. Every alliance that you make is a sign that you're afraid and you're really not sure you can trust God of the universe to come through for you. Well, let's go down to the second war. It says many years later now. It's again Assyria. This is in the time of Hezekiah, down in Isaiah chapter 36 and 37. So these two battles, and we'll see what the common links are. Now the 10 tribes are gone. There's just this little tribe of Judah left. Assyria's coming again, Sennacherib. And he sends his generals to all the children of Israel from Judah and calls them to surrender. So we have in Isaiah chapter 36, starting with verse 4. Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing this confidence of yours? You say you have strategy and military strength, but you speak only empty words. On whom are you depending that you rebel against me? Look now, you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, which pierces a man's hand and wounds him if he leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. And if you say to me, we are depending on the Lord our God, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before this altar? Who are you relying on? The Jews finally got so frustrated, they said to the generals, speak to us in Aramaic. So the people on the walls can't understand. They were afraid that all these people on the walls would hear these challenges and lose their faith in God. No, they shouted only louder. And then it goes to verse 15. Do not let Hezekiah persuade you to trust in the Lord when he says, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and come out to me. Then every one of you will eat from his own vine and fig tree and drink water from his own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Do not let Hezekiah mislead you when he says, the Lord will deliver us. Has the God of any nation ever delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods? Who of all the gods of these countries has been able to save his land from me? How then can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand? Great, great, great challenge. Who are you going to rely on? Who are you relying on? I had to get on an airplane in a country down in Africa here a little while ago. And after some of the stories people told me, I was scared to get on the plane. They said, if you have a choice, don't get on, go on this plane instead. I love the people, but I was scared to rely on that plane. Who do you rely on? Where are you investing your money? I have a friend came to me the other day and said, Dan, you know, I've been investing money for some other people. I've been making 15 or 20%. It was tempting to take what little money I have and give it to him. How did I know? Could I trust him? Who are you relying on? When I was a young pastor, there was a member of our particular denomination, the Seventh-day Adventist, who was building post offices all over the country. And he would ask people to invest in him, and he would give back 15%, many times more than what you could get any other way. Friends of mine did it, lost all their money. It was the Ponzi pyramid scheme where they were paying out old funds with new money. And that's how they were giving all these returns. Finally, they ran out. Who do you rely on? Who do you rely on? Where do you send your kids? You send your kids to Christian schools, to Pathfinder, to Sabbath school? Do you have worship every day? Or are you trusting video games and television and their friends down the street? Yes, you can go to public schools and be in the real world, absolutely, and be a person of God. Who are you relying on? Or are you taking a chance? And they said, you can't rely on God. He will not come through. He hasn't delivered anyone else from us. You can't rely on that God. Rely on our gods. Rely on us. Isaiah sends a message. Isaiah 37, verse 6. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid of what you have heard, those words of which the underlings of the kings of Assyria have blasphemed me. And then it says, do not let the God you depend on deceive you when he says Jerusalem will be handed over to the king. They go on, message after message. The king of Assyria hears about this message from Isaiah. He says, don't listen to him. Those gods will never deliver you from my hand. No one else has been delivered. Why would you be delivered? And so the challenge is there. Can you, when you feel attacked, look around and really trust in God? Or is it tempting to rely on something else, to make an alliance? I can remember sitting in a living room when we were going to cast out the demons from somebody. And when I heard that pastor call out the demons, I grabbed the couch. Thought maybe I could hold on to something solid and tangible. I said, no, that's not going to help. I need God. I'm going to have to trust in the God of the universe has more power than the demonic powers. Who are you relying on? And now we come to one of the greatest verses of the Bible. In Isaiah chapter 37, verse 14, where it says, Hezekiah, scared to death, received a letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. Where do you take your letter from Assyria? Hezekiah took his greatest fears. He was going to lose his country and all his people were going to be destroyed and the temple would be destroyed. And God's dream of what he was going to do with his remnant, chosen covenant people was all going to be destroyed. And he takes his greatest fear and he goes before God and he says, here, God, I'm looking to you. And he prays this incredible prayer. We are the people with your name. God, we're looking to you. Please come through for your people. Where do you go when you feel attacked? When you get an email from somebody that's hurting you? When you get a doctor's report that has something pretty scary? I'm waiting for a doctor's report right now as we speak. What's it going to say? Is it cancerous or is it benign or is it okay? When you get a credit card bill that you just cannot pay off. I've got one of those right now. As I tape this comes right out of the holidays. And I had to use the credit card for a few things that I can't pay off right now. What do you do when you feel the snakes are in your house? Capital S snakes. And the demonic powers of the world are after you or your family and your relationship with God. And you're not sure where there's enough money, or you're being criticized, or you're in trouble. And your mortgage, you're upside down in your house, and you say, where is God? Where do you go with that? Who do you lay your letter in front of? Or are you taking it to God and laying it in front of the temple and say, God, this is yours. This is on you, God. I can't carry this. Where are you going with your letter? Then it says in chapter 37, verse 36, then the angel of the Lord went before them. The angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. And he returned to Nineveh and stayed there, and there his sons killed him. The mighty powers were destroyed, and little Judah ended up being triumphant. Does this mean that God is always going to kill all the people that are bothering you? No, it doesn't mean that. These 185,000 stand for Satan and the demonic spirits. And when you feel like the demonic spirits are after you in your family, in your relationship with God, or your finances, or your health, take that letter to God and say, God, these are my greatest fears. I'm surrounded by these powers. What are you going to do? And watch God wipe out the enemies in your life, the demonic spirits that are after you. He who is within you is greater than he that is in the world. So who are you making an alliance with? Where do you go with your greatest fears, with your letters from Assyria? Take them to God. Read Isaiah 36 and 37 again and watch and see what God will do. Take your letters to the temple of God and say, God, this one's on you. Just thought of this little illustration. I was in Seleucia University in Africa, Zimbabwe. Wonderful group of people, precious to me. I'll be flying there in a few weeks to do their graduation. Got emails from them today. Great, challenging place. Everywhere, people hungry, people struggling to eat, grade school, families. Whenever the school had food to give, more kids came to school because they could eat. And so a group of us on our campus there at La Sierra got an idea. What could we do to help them grow their own food? So we got the idea, if we could get them packets of seed, then they could make their own gardens and take care of themselves. So I got the idea we would go to our high school where my sons are going, La Sierra Academy. Got the idea of having a little contest. Freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, whichever class got the most, they would get an award and points in their system. If they could bring seeds of garden, seeds for vegetables, fruit, some flowers. I thought if we got one per student, maybe 300 packs, that'd be great. They had the contest. I bought some for my boys to take. And then the word came. They were counting them. Took them hours to count. 300, 600, 1,000, 2,000. Finally, it was 9,000 packets of seeds. Our little faith would just say, okay, we took this little small problem. We went before God, and God did the miracle. Give it to God today and watch and see what he will do. Amen.